I want to welcome everybody back to the FITSNews studio. We've got a very special guest today. She is campaigning for the office of Attorney General here in South Carolina. Lauren Martel, an attorney from Bluffton, South Carolina, running against third-term incumbent Alan Wilson.
Yeah.
Lauren, we met some of your supporters down in Bluffton at an event last night. It seems like you got some good support down there. Before we get into the race and the politics, just give our readers a little bit about you, who you are.
Well, thanks for having me. It's so wonderful to be here, actually, in the studio to meet you in person and to see how everything works here. It's an honor. Bluffton was great last night, I understand. I actually was in an event at Beaufort last night, so I missed that. But I do have some really great supporters, so I thank you for noticing that.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into law. Tell a little bit about your personal history.
Again, thanks for asking. I love law. I always loved trying to, I came from a family of four. And so mom, dad, my mom stayed at home for a while and very big on education and big on civics and politics. They were always very involved. So I grew up with a sense of, civic duty and also fairness. And I guess being the oldest, I was always sort of trying to protect the little ones coming along of my little sisters and brothers. And so automatically I turned into, an advocate for the vulnerable and the younger than me. And so as I grew up, I just really enjoyed the law. Although this is what many lawyers do say, I did want to become a veterinarian for a period of time, but math and science got in the way. So lawyers become lawyers when and not doctors when that gets in the way. But I pursued my career by going to law school, finished in 1990. I have my degree from Syracuse University and commenced practicing law when I moved down here in 1992. And I've been practicing in our beautiful Palmetto State ever since then.
That's wonderful. You mentioned education earlier. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were earlier this year, before you made up your mind to campaign for Attorney General, you looked at that superintendent position too, didn't you?
It was an interesting idea. At the time, it was a natural sort of course with where we were going. In 2020, many parents called me. They were very concerned with some of the issues surrounding the children's education, how things were being handled in the schools. And so I wrote a few cease and desist letters on some issues that were brewing. At that time, it was some of the mask mandates, but it's since turned into obscenity and pornography in schools. It's also turned into segregation that we're finding, reverse segregation in Pickens County, which is a hot topic right now. And so in the beginning, when I was starting to represent the parents, another gentleman who was given an illegal, unconstitutional no trespass order when he clapped a little too loudly in a school board meeting, but he was given this from the school board chairman and not the sheriff's department. So these were the kind of things where I started representing the parents, serving the school board, and then I said I needed to serve Molly Spearman and DHEC and a few other things that we ended up calling people out individually. And so for a period of time, I was saying that I was going to sue Molly Spearman and then I was going to take her job.
Yeah.
But that actually did not make any sense because it was a pretty clear path to the Attorney General's office. I am an attorney. I have a Juris Doctorate. Mm-hmm. And it's time to challenge the incumbent. So,
yeah. And I love Molly Spearman on a personal level, but God, she's been terrible in that office. In that Teacher of the Year fiasco, we covered that. You talked about some of the problems, the things that are getting these parents riled up. And we did a story earlier I guess it was last week, on the Teacher of the Year, who's just a avowed critical race theory advocate.
Right, and the parents are doing some Freedom of Information Act to find out exactly what their children are learning and what's in the schools, and they're blocking that and redacting it to the point where they don't give them anything, saying it's proprietary information. But this is unprecedented that parents don't have more input in what's going on with what their children are learning. And let's just go back to the pornography that's in schools. Title 16, it's Title 16, 15, 305, I believe. And that's going to be the obscenity statute. And if you read it, it absolutely lines up with these 6 books that have been identified. And the narrative of the books are just so clearly obscene. and they're targeted at the middle school children right now. So I have a client in that case where she filed a police report, and this is actually right in your neck of the woods in the Lexington Richland District 5.
Oh, yes.
And the police did take a report. They wanted to do it internally, which I didn't think was a good idea. They wanted a resource officer to investigate it. We wanted an outside police officer to go in and take a look and investigate these books. We've asked the school board and their lawyers now, who I'm in contact with, to just at least remove the books until they can be scrutinized and take them off the approved list. Right. So part of that, the rumble among the pushback is this is a book banning situation, which it's absolutely not. Clearly, I went to Syracuse. I'm very well read. I love books, but this is targeted pornography that's being disseminated to minors, and that's a crime in our state. So the Lexington County did take a police report. The parent who went to go file a police report here in Richland County, actually the police refused to even take the report. And so I think that's a problem, because when you have a criminal statute and a parent goes and says there's a crime going on, will you please investigate it, to refuse to even take the report, that's not a very good thing. And it sounds like that's the district that the incumbent lives in, or at least has influence in Richland County.
Well, my kids go to school. A couple of my kids go to school in that district. We've got an interesting setup. Some are homeschooled, some are charter, some are in the traditional government-run schools. But yeah, you're right. That's in our backyard. Well, I'm glad you're fighting that fight.
Well, and it's not one that I would normally have known about, right? My children are grown now, and I did the same thing. There were times when it was appropriate to go to private school. There were times when it was appropriate to go to public school. And both of my girls graduated and are very successful. And so we didn't have this as much. But when you look at have you read the narrative of the books that have been identified as obscenity in the schools?
We've covered a lot of different obscenity cases, but I'm not sure that we've read the standard you're referring to. But certainly we've been calling those districts out and been publishing lots of articles holding them accountable.
Right. Well, and that's what has to happen. I think more and more parents need to, not everybody can afford an attorney, and this is certainly a public interest case. Another reason why I'm running for Attorney General, because I can help one or two people if they come to my law practice, hire me, and we do a lawsuit. But we can only do the civil side of it, right? There's a criminal aspect of this that needs to be looked into, and certainly I would have the authority under the constitutional elected office of the Attorney General.
Sure. You would be the state's top prosecutor.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this: the top prosecutor, do you have experience prosecuting cases, or what's your legal?
That's a great point. So when I first started out practicing law, I cut my teeth, and they say you cut your teeth at the School of Hard Vox, and so I worked at Vox and Marsher for 5 years.
Okay.
Now, he was very close to the Murdaugh situation back in the day. So I knew Randolph Murdaugh when he was a solicitor, and Roberts was defending a lot of cases back then. So during that 5-year period, I learned a lot about both sides of how things are done. I was able to go in and watch a lot of different trials that were taking place. Mostly Vox and Marsher would have been from the defense side, but obviously there were close ties to the prosecutor side. And I know Duffy Stone in my area, and so I've followed a lot of those cases. I have mostly only tried defense work myself, but the Attorney General's office is one where there's a vast staff, and in order to prosecute things, we can put the right people in lined up for that. It's so multifaceted. It needs someone who has the experience that I have with also some of the civil things, and coming at some of the things where I've seen problems of the duty to defend the law. And the trend in the Attorney General's office since 2008 has been counterintuitive to historically what the Attorney General's office has been. Usually it's a duty to defend the law, the Constitution, and the people. In 2008, through academics and law journals and under the guide of Eric Holder back in the day, they flipped it and said, rather than duty to defend, if an AG has an opinion that a law is unconstitutional, they don't have to defend it anymore. So when that happened, they stood down on a lot of laws, and quite a few of the laws fell after that. One that I think is a glaring situation of duty to defend our laws was the Heritage Act. Instead of defending the Heritage Act in total, it was half of it was thrown out as unconstitutional without a fight. Does that make sense?
Which half are you referring to, though?
The 2/3 majority.
Okay.
And then the rest of it ended up standing. But other laws that have not been defended would be people's religious exemptions during this period of time when things were being blanket denied.
But I do want to ask you about that. You talk about that 2/3 majority. If your contention, and for those of you who don't follow this, basically, Heritage Act was a bill that was passed by South Carolina General Assembly. It's part of a compromise that took the Confederate flag off the dome, right?
Right.
So what the bill does is it requires a 2/3 majority to make any change to anything related to the Confederacy, civil rights movement. That's part of it as well. But the argument made by, I guess, the incumbent Attorney General, Alan Wilson, in his opinion on it, is that the 2/3 majority is unconstitutional. And the logic there is that if we are members of a legislative body today, you and I, Lauren, we pass a bill, we can't set that kind of standard for future legislators. And I guess your point is that we can. You think we have that authority?
Well, we wrote a brief, and it argued that it was constitutional in total, right? What we sent it up, the way that case shook down is it went right straight up to original jurisdiction, which means it wasn't on the public docket as easily accessible to the public. It kept it out of the public eye to what was going on. Most cases have to go through a trial, then go through the Court of Appeals, then go to the Supreme Court. This one shot straight to the Supreme Court, and
they agreed with the Attorney General, correct?
They did in
Okay.
that case. They
But
did.
you disagree.
I do, and we wrote a brief. But now the law is what it is. The Supreme Court has issued the ruling that the Heritage Act is constitutional, minus the 2/3.
Correct.
But there are plenty of other laws that have a 2/3 supermajority requirement, right? So our position was, look, if you're going to do that for here, then you need to go back and take it out for all these other ones too.
Well, that's fair.
Let's equal
I got no
opportunity
problem with
under
that.
the law. That's right.
That's fair enough.
Exactly.
So you believe that the AG has not been, the current AG, Alan Wilson, has been insufficiently zealous, or what's your beef with him in the Heritage Act?
Well, as far as the Heritage Act goes, so even with the new finding that part of it was unconstitutional, there's still the law there. And we're finding throughout the state, Lee memorials are coming down. The public buildings are being renamed. There's one called Miminger Hall. He was the treasurer and did some of the financing. Very historical figure. And the title of the property is still the same, but they just ended up changing the name of itself on the outside to Festival Hall. So, like it or not, what we need to do is go through the law. And so I filed a writ of mandamus most recently to just ask the court to direct the defendants that we named in that to follow the law and to put the monuments back and change the name back. And then go through the right way to change it if they want to.
Fair enough. We'll get a little more into the current AG, your opponent in this primary, in a moment. But let's talk a little bit. You have offered some criticism of him on another front, I guess, related to this plutonium lawsuit. Is that correct?
It is.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, I first became aware of this when I read an article, and it may have been an article that you wrote. So thank you for good journalism and
What can I
really
say?
bringing these things to the forefront. And after reading it, I dug a little bit deeper myself, and it occurred, this deal occurred in 2020. And I've heard from people that it's possible that more money could have been gotten. Obviously, we have a bunch of plutonium here. We have a cleanup. We have people who need, the cleanup. We have people who are affected by this. So some people say that could have been billions, but that wasn't really the issue for me to, scrutinize. My scrutiny came with, people were being masked up. They were calling me to try to get help in, the hospitals to save their families' lives. They were looking at each other back and forth, wondering who was essential. They were looking at each other, wondering whose business was going to get shut down. And during that period of time, In 2020, Allen contracted out with his own law firm. Now, an attorney general can contract to outside private law firms.
Mm-hmm.
It should be done very judiciously,
Mm-hmm.
and usually with a clear hourly rate would be probably the best way to handle those things. Contingency fees obviously are when you take a percentage of the outcome of the settlement. In this particular case, Alan Wilson contracted out with Willoughby and Hafer, his old law firm, and they got a contingency fee, what I would call a windfall.
Mm-hmm.
So out of the $600 million, their firm got $75 million.
Correct.
And in the interim, I understand a public interest firm wanted to try to have an accounting of that, and before they could even file a lawsuit to freeze the money had been wired and gone. And the attorneys just said, look, the money's gone, and they didn't account for it at all. Mm-hmm. So my understanding when I went to the Supreme Court and watched the oral arguments, which were very well done by the plaintiff's attorney, John Carpenter, did a great job. He laid out that this was a public interest standing case. So that's the only issue before the Supreme Court right now. But the reason why that they said it was is because not only was this fee done a particular way where they got the windfall money, and they're concerned that the Attorney General didn't follow the law and put all of the money into the general fund first and then have it dispersed. Okay. But they also said there's 6 other identical contingency fees lined up. And the next one in line is the opioid crisis settlement. And in my personal opinion, this settlement with the opioid crisis is just hush money. It's $300 million to our state. That's clearly not enough for the problems that we've had with drugs in our state and how it's really been infested and people have really suffered, died. We've had a lot of issues. So I submit to you that there's 2 reasons why I will be a better next Attorney General. One, we're going to deal with the root of the problem of the drugs coming into our state. And 2, I won't, if any deals come in like this, like the $300 million, take a contingency fee. Mm. So he's set to just make his pet law firms obscenely rich while people are still suffering. And what does that actually do to stop the true problem of the drugs in our state?
So your belief is that the AG is insufficiently prosecuting drug crimes in the state?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That part of that is because of this settlement?
Well, maybe not. Maybe part of that is just because he's turned a blind eye to it. Okay. And, I mean, when you start getting into drugs, both legal and illegal, one of the big lobbies in our state that has its tentacles deeply rooted in our state are the pharmaceutical companies.
Fair enough.
And when Alan Wilson became a member of the Aspen Institute in 2017, he almost directly put himself in a conflict with the South Carolina Constitution.
How so?
Because the Aspen Institute is a mentor-mentee program, and once you become an official member, it is pretty much subsidized by George Soros money and Bill Gates Foundation money, which they openly admit to having a globalist, more international agenda, and it certainly doesn't take it back to the duty to defend the state of South Carolina, right? Now you're serving 2 masters in an office where you have a duty to serve the people and the state law. And so Alan, when he became a member of the Aspen Institute, obviously was able to brush shoulders with a lot of very influential people, especially during these last 4 years. But I submit to you that it has done nothing to help the inalienable rights of the people of South Carolina.
Fair enough. I did write, you were correct, we wrote extensively back in, I guess it was 2020 when all this first started going down with the plutonium. My understanding is that we're looking at, 19 metric tons? How much plutonium is there?
It's quite a bit, and there's more coming, I understand. I need to find out more, and of course I'm not privy to that at this point yet, but South Carolina needs to be very careful about allowing anything more to come in right now.
So it's $600 million initially, and then there's another, is it $2 billion total over the life of this agreement? So it's not just this initial money, and I think we did the math on the fees the other day. It was, I think, came in at about 3% over the life of the deal. But you think 3% is excessive on a multi-billion-dollar settlement, and you're saying that you wouldn't take that much
No, and so many different things can change, especially up front. You know, I mean, up front, it's not
Because
the
they're
right
not
thing to
moving
do.
I mean, I think everybody knows they're not going to move the plutonium.
Right.
There's no plan to move. They've, I think, gotten rid of 1 metric ton, correct?
Yeah, and where do they put it? That's right. There's no place else
Right,
that
because
they can dump
Arizona
it.
doesn't want it. There's a court case over there. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was Governor Nikki Haley, though, that signed off on this agreement when the AG brought it to her back in 2016 when this firm pitched him on it.
And Nikki didn't always serve the people of the state of South Carolina either. So
That's true.
she really didn't. I
You get
sued
no argument
Nikki.
from me on that.
That's right. And I sued Nikki back in 2015 when she was allowing unvetted refugees to come in unaccountable through programs like charitable. They were delegating out the job of actually the Department of Homeland Security to charitable churches like Lutheran services and, and so then they go into the system and without real accounting and end up taxpayers would have to subsidize that. So definitely not looking out for South Carolina first. And that's where I'm a South Carolina first candidate. I'm going to make sure people don't feel like their businesses are going to be shut down. I drive around this entire state. I see businesses closed. I see dilapidated buildings. I see almost an oppression, I feel, in some of the areas where you can just tell that there needs to be life. And a way to bring back life is to bring back the creativity of people locally and their ability to not be overreached through government, through licensing and overreaching with South Carolina DHEC. These are unelected agencies that have overreached into people's pockets for too long. And that's the job of the Attorney General. I mean, to protect the law and the people. And so if I would never say that SC DHEC would have the amount of power that it has. And they've created themselves almost like along with the SC Accelerate SC, which was a not elected, just an appointed board
Governor
from the governor.
McMaster's
Correct.
group, correct.
And I would never allow that to continue to go on. I mean, it's an unconstitutional use of power that the people now they're not accountable to the people, and so they don't care.
You didn't want to run for governor?
Well, it's too late to decide that. So no, I'll run. Well, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run for Attorney General, become Attorney General for 4 years, and then I'll run for governor.
There you go.
How about that?
That's the plan. That's
Yeah.
the plan.
So, and it's ridiculous the amount of money that we have going out. I mean, the Ukraine is another thing. Again, I'm South Carolina first, and we need to take care of our people here, our veterans, our own roads, our own infrastructure. Our schools are a mess. I mean, we're sitting here talking about this obscenity and we can't get a police report filed on a crime going on against children, minor children, and our children, the education is very low. We're not competitive right now. We need to be more competitive. We need to get our eye on the ball a little bit better. So the South Carolina Attorney General's office looks into breaking up monopolies, looking into antitrust violations, criminal reform. We've got criminals that get arrested, get really light terms or just an ankle bracelet, go back out, and are recidivists, right? We're not making sure that people who may be a danger to society are not being let out. And it's just because of who they know or what they know, and that's not acceptable either. These people who are victims now have to be protected by the rule of law. And if we don't have the rule of law, we don't have our representative republic. And the representative republic in South Carolina is fully clogged by what I call the Leviathan of the administrative state. And it's created policy and things that aren't actual constitutional based laws, and it's created through the hospital administration. And I saw that in the COVID unilateral protocol. And one lawsuit that I was involved in, we were able to get a gentleman who had been on a ventilator for 27 days, in his 40s, a young father. His wife said, I really want to try to give him some other supplements. We found a doctor, a heroic doctor, Dr. Jackson, who was willing in this lawsuit to go in. And we went in, and every day it was about 25 days, the doctor went in almost 2 hours out of his day, to do this. Crunched up the supplements, put him in the IV bag. The man came off the ventilator, stepped down recovery therapy places, and now he's at home. And I met him in person for the first time and gave him a hug 2 weeks ago in Greenville at a melting pot, event for me. And these are the people who are my biggest supporters. they were able to live. And it wasn't just me, it was a group of people who were in the face of everyone else giving up and saying there's only one protocol, because that's the only one the hospital was doing. The hospital's lawyers once told me, we challenge you to find a hospital anywhere in South Carolina that's going to do something different for people like this. And that was when I knew that there might be a manipulation of the market. There was a suppression of certain medications, and I understand from a whistleblower pharmacist that they were literally removed from the hospital and sent away, shipped away. Suppression of life-saving medications, and then the unilateral protocol, which ended up having about an 87 to 90% failure rate, meaning people died, was not good. And so when I looked at some of my clients through this process, there were two people that lived, and a lot. Then I heard and talked and walked other people through a very difficult time. In a way, I felt that we were in an asymmetrical geopolitical war where lawfare was part of it, and some of these casualties were these people that I was watching just die in the hospitals without their family members. Very inhumane as well. It was so counterintuitive to what is decent and what I've grown up understanding, what we try to help people. And so with these two gentlemen that survived, I hugged the other guy and met him in Rock Hill at a Chick-fil-A that he owns, a Chick-fil-A. And I said, we need to start getting the voting out like the way they do that new Chick-fil-A line. I think his son-in-law figured out that whole second line, which is very entrepreneurial. And this is what I'd love to see coming back into South Carolina, the entrepreneurial creativeness and entrepreneurialness of our people. And so I'm running as the people's candidate. It's a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's how we get back our state of South Carolina. And I think you asked me in your question that, how important is it that we know who's manipulating the markets? And that's really, at the end of the day, I told you the backstory of the hospital situation to tell you that when we start digging deep into those bills, there's a lot of shenanigans going on. And that's in the purview of the Attorney General's office to look into Medicare, Medicaid fraud, insurance fraud. And Mako Medical, let's talk about SCDHEC. Mako Medical got a letter from our current Attorney General in 2019, pre-COVID. And that letter stated that Chad Price was a great guy and Mako Medical was a great startup company. Since then, I understand that Chad Price donated quite a bit of money to Alan's campaign, and right after the 2019, and I understand that he, Chad Price, and Mako was investigated for false positives of their COVID tests and some potential fraud. And that can be looked into more, but that's from an article that I read on this situation. So when we dug a little deeper, we found out that Mako got all of the SCDHEC COVID testing contracts, multi-million-dollar COVID testing contracts, as well as in the schools. And so that's where I had some parents that would come to me and they'd say, look, we don't want something going up our children's nose. They're pretty much healthy all the time. Maybe once in a blue moon, do a test or see what's going on. But on a weekly basis, to have to test children with a swab that contains multiple ingredients, some known carcinogenic ingredients through the sterilization process, having that to have to go up their children's nose all the time. Some parents obviously would say, no, I really don't want to have my child subjected to that. And, there's just been a push to have this. And where's the Attorney General to stand in the gap to push back about that? And so I've really heard from so many, it's really started with the parents where I saw this, parents and then family members in hospitals, when I said there must be a manipulation of the markets going on. But look at what just happened with the medical marijuana situation, right?
We covered that extensively, yeah.
You had the votes, and the votes were there. I've talked to doctors myself, and of course, medical freedom is one of my big, there's a billboard out there somewhere on I-26. Y'all have to go and find it and see what it looks. And my friends who put that up, the first person to put a billboard up was down in 95 near me. And she created the artwork, and it says, do you support medical freedom in South Carolina? And then it says, vote Laura Martel for AG, June 14th. And then that got picked up here, and these are in LED lights. And so somebody said, "Oh, you're in LED lights now. You're up on the screen." And I said, "No, it's not me. It's freedom that's up there." And that's what the people need, and that's what our state needs, and we're ready to return back to that. It's so far out of balance. But when you look at how things might have gone sideways with what we were just talking about, and I think you've covered those stories very extensively, certainly the pharmaceutical lobby has a huge hold on most of our politicians. Mm-hmm. And when they serve these, it's called corporatism. When you serve the corporations and you're not serving the people, things get skewed. So I've always believed that if a doctor thought that it helped with epilepsy or glaucoma, there's a variety of different things that they were very clear about, that they weren't trying to open up the door for recreational, a gateway to recreational use, but that it was for medical purposes. And that tugs my heartstrings, because there's real people in real time suffering. And if we truly believe that what makes us free is that there's divine providence, and we have a constitution that acknowledges the inalienable rights, and so people have free will to choose, government cannot take back away what God's given. So it's time for the people to rise up and know that if they need to have something that's going to save their family member's life, they need to try everything that they can.
You're absolutely right. In fact, we had you mentioned the people who were suffering. We had one of them in our studio just this week, Julie Swing. She's an advocate. Her daughter has intractable epilepsy, has hundreds of seizures a day. Julie's been pushing for 8 years to get that medical marijuana bill through. Mm-hmm. So it's just embarrassing what the House of Representatives did. And it's even more embarrassing, you mentioned freedom. The so-called Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives overwhelmingly voted to kill that medical marijuana bill. But Lauren, we're grateful you came in. We're going to have your opponent in here at some point. Okay. We haven't had him in here yet, but we're going to get him in here at some point. But one of two candidates for Attorney General. Is anybody else running? It's just the two of y'all? It's just the two of us, and there's no Democrat. Okay. And it's an open primary. Like it or not, I hear a lot of people who, say, well, we need to have closed primaries. Well, you know what? We don't. So we have to use the tools that we have right now. And I know that there's a lot of people who are very interested in the Attorney General race. And so, just remember to vote June 14th. Awesome. Well, Lauren, thanks for coming in. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for sharing your views. A lot of common ground here, and grateful you took the time to sit down with us. And, if you do want to look more, I do things more detailed on my website often too, at martelforag.com, and people can see historically what my positions have been, so that you can see that it's not just 3 weeks before an election that I'm taking these positions. I have a long-standing, solid reputation of taking positions just like we discussed. Consistency matters. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day.